I met Darragh and Manuel while I was fortunate enough to do the SAP Pre-Sales Enablement Academy in Barcelona, Spain. And it was one of the greatest learning experiences that I've ever had. They are both veterans of the facilitation and learning industry, and fortunately they had finally made their way to Johannesburg, South Africa to again conduct the academy. I caught up with them and asked them some pertinent questions about learning and digitization. Let's have a look. The first question I posed was, in their experience, what's the effect that digitization has had on learning?
So I believe, that the main change that we see has to do with the personalization of the experience. Whereas so far we were always looking for personalizing the products or the services that we were offering, especially learning. Now we see that the most relevant happens around the experience that the person is having around the product or that service.
Yeah. So, and it's the same whether it's a face-to-face experience or an online experience. And our experiences as learners are shaped by our experiences as people. So now you can download a personal account or a personalized app and you get that level of expectancy. So if I want to go and find information, let's say I'm interested in, how to sell business-to-business software, then I can search for the information, I can find it, I can tailor it for myself, and I'm expecting the learning expert, or I guess people who provide services to me, to have done some of that work first, to have curated some of that, so when I get it, they've filtered out some of the noise and the thing that really matters to me.
Yeah, totally. So you don't feel like one of a million in a box, but you are you, and the thing has been addressed to you.
Yeah.
I then posed a question about the increasing virtualization of the classroom, and secondly, end users or learners' access to learning.
So one of the main things that we have realized by rolling out this program globally is that doesn't mind where you are, in everywhere there is an issue around learning through virtual environments. So for people like us, we are quite experienced enablers. We have seen that when you're in the room, you are able to read the people, right? And then you are able to look for that personalization that we commented before by adapting the same content to the people that you have in the room. That in a virtual environment becomes very difficult. So there is the need of having the system learning how the people are consuming the information, so that the system itself is able to adapt the experience.
Yeah, and there's some advantages to virtual learning that you don't have face to face. The key element for us is always the learning, and as always the learner is at the center of the process. So when somebody is growing up and they're not able to access a classroom, or they're in an environment, maybe they work from their home office and they can't make it in for whatever reason, expenses and so on, they still need to access learning in a particular way. And then if a system can identify who those people are and what their concerns are, what their role is, and the things that they need to know, and also give them a chance to look for the things that are most important to them, then that can help them to personalize the experience. So it brings up a question of skills, which is the people who produce digital learning or virtual learning need to have the skills to be able to understand who the learner is and what their concerns are, and curate content appropriately, or to blend elements where people can consume things for themselves based on what they want to search, and then discuss that, whether it's in a virtual session or in a face-to-face session. But the key element is that the learning is transferred, and people can access it in their own time, but also if they need to talk about higher order thinking skills, or to analyse it, or to use it, that they can do it in a virtual group, or they can do it face-to-face. And the skills to do that, and the technologies to do that, is still a work in progress.
I then asked them to expand a little bit on the increasing trend of personalization that we see in learning.
So both Darragh and myself work as you know in global teams, and then we are facing this issue in every single program we are working on. So the approach that we always try to have is like you cannot get, even if the need is to push the same content into different cultures, you cannot get the same approach in getting that content to those cultures. So what we are always trying to do is to develop the core fundamentals, which usually are the same, in a very agnostic model, so that it can cover different cultures, so that then apply different layers that will allow us to get to the different cultures that we are trying to do.
Yeah, and fundamentally, everybody knows how their culture works much better than anybody else. So when you're producing content for a particular culture, you have to use it as a framework to make people think, not to give them you must do this or you must do that, but to say here's some best practice ideas or here's some core fundamentals. How will that work where you are? And that how will it work where you are is very different if you go to China than it is if you go to Sao Paulo or you go to North America. And this can also have an impact on the delivery model. So you might want local facilitation, or you might want to have people in the local language who discuss content that's standardized. So there's this mix between a standard, global standard and a local interpretation. And the model to do that varies. And the model we've used is fundamental, and then to say, you know how it works where you are much better than we do, so let's talk about whether this will work at all, and if it will work, what are the best ways to do it.
Yeah, and at the end the learning happens at the end of the level, right? That's right. So the idea is to provide the content and the structure to have the right conversation and to provide the right framework, as you said, but then create that higher layer where it's inspirational in order to make that learning happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another topic that I raised with them was the question of artificial intelligence and big data and its application or potential application to learning.
For me, I think one of the real advantages of digitalization is it's leveled the playing field to a large extent, and it's given people who wouldn't have access otherwise the chance to access content. Now, with that comes some challenges, because we discussed this briefly already, that if I'm, let's say I'm a young guy in India or in South Africa, and I want to get access to very good content for an MBA, but I can't afford an MBA. So I might look and see, Princeton, Yale, Stanford, MIT, OpenCourseWare, or I might see MOOCs or massive open online courses, and there's a lot of stuff out there now, and there's more of that been produced by more and more different people. And then as niches emerge, you get all sorts of niche players coming up, and that's producing a proliferation of data, which means that somebody has to curate that data, or somebody has to make decisions about, is this a good or is this a bad set of learning? Who's it good for? Is it good for this type of person, the guy who wants to do the MBA but can't afford it? Is it good for a 15-year-old? And what kind of categories make sense? And I think AI can be very useful in filtering out the noise and helping people to curate content more effectively, again to make it personal and relevant for the learner. So that if I'm this young guy in South Africa, maybe I could get cherry-picked content. There's been some artificial intelligence which has gone out, apply some criteria to that. Maybe I have somebody with learning management skills who's looked at it and said, yeah, this content is relevant. So then when I look at it, I can filter through that and get what I need pretty quickly. It's relevant and it's going to make a difference for me. So that excites me, that kind of filtering the noise from the really juicy stuff.
And this is said from the perspective of the content, and I totally agree with you. What really excites me, is also the possibilities from a facilitation standpoint. So because again, I don't believe that the concept of teaching is no longer sustainable. So we are more facilitators of learning.
Yes.
And then for that facilitation, we need to apply a lot of techniques that needs a lot of know-how in order to adapt the same content, the cure content that you were saying, but facilitate the learning process in the student or the audience. So the ability that we see now of machines being able to learn from the students what is the best way they have to learn and applying the facilitation of the content is really an exciting opportunity.
And then finally, as they had been facilitators for such a long time, I asked them if they could recount a specific memorable moment on this ongoing journey.
For me, one of the eye-opening experiences personally was I did a master's in Dublin City University in Ireland, and I was asked by a teacher, what do you want to learn? And I thought, nobody's ever asked me that question. I'm now doing a master's. I've been through all my education and nobody ever asked me, what do you want to learn? So I thought, that's crazy. Why isn't that happening? And now the internet is like, what do you want to learn? On steroids. You know, you can go and find out whatever you like. So for me, I try and bring that experience to learners. And every time I see the lights come on for people, I say, what do you want to learn? And I help them do that, and I see them get passionate about it. And I get that very, very regularly in my job. That's what excites me.
Yeah. And to me, it's like, whatever you do for work, right, you are always looking where the maximum impact is. So we are lucky enough as to be able to be working in different initiatives and to pick those ones that we want to work in, right? So always my first choice is those where you have the most impact. And then working enablement, sometimes I receive these emails after the learning that the learning has passed where the people say, guys, you changed my life, or guys, you changed the way that I was doing things. This is what really motivates me to work in enablement and really makes me happy.
I hope that you've taken some inspiration from these two gentlemen, and then we'll see you in the next episode of That Digital Learning Show.